There we go. Well, hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays, our literary series after 3 weeks off. This is our second of last broadcast of the year. And tonight, my guest is from the North Shore of Massachusetts, Margaret Young. And let me tell you a little bit about Margaret. Photo credit, Jen Young, no relation, I'm sure. Margaret Young grew up in Oberlin, Ohio. She earned a BA from Yale and worked in a traveling theater company before earning her MA in creative writing. She taught writing and theater to all ages, has been an artist in residence in school, and received an individual artist grant. Um, she's got 4 books of poetry and a translation. Instead of me reading it to you, if you're really interested, it's margaretyoungpoet.com. So please feel free to check it out. And without anything more from me, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret, and she's going to read from some poems.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. This is part of my grand tour of promoting my new chapbook. How else can we know what's beautiful? Just came out autumn from Finishing Line Press, and I'm going to read probably 7 poems from it. So, yeah, the book isn't too much in the way. This is the first poem in the book. Ritual. Mark a circle on the earth. Start digging. Dig until you're deep enough you can't see the surface unless you climb out. Keep digging until you reach another substance. Water, gold, oil. While you're digging, sing a song about how hard it is, how your ancestors dug their way to freedom, even if they didn't. Go deeper. Hit a rock. Hit several. Dig until you fall down. Sleep a while with worms in your hair, grit in your socks, paintings of bones inside your brain. This poem has an epigraph from a poem by my father, David Young. He's a poet and translator, done a lot, still with us. But this is a poem from when I was very small, the poem called Homing. Sometimes I have to remember to notice my children. Oh, Father, oh, anxiety. Sometimes I have to remember to notice. Sometimes I have to notice I remember. Sometimes I remember I have to notice. I have to notice sweetness. I notice I remember less. I have to remember to listen. I won't forget how music began. I remember sometimes where words come from. Sometimes I remember all the words. I'll always remember some of the music. It plays and plays until we remember. Dragon World. I want one of those dogs that fits into a teacup. I want to carry it in my cargo pants pocket like a sack of mixed nuts. On one side of the hill, tin shacks cling. On the other, paper airplanes settle among the shameless cactus blossoms. Why my sinuses? Is there a saint for that? Why expansion? Why acceleration? Can you feel it too? When I was 7, I talked to God, also a small silver dragon that came up from its dragon world each night. This is a prose poem. Art. We were exploring the museum in groups of 7 or 8. when suddenly a huge package on the ceiling burst open, releasing hundreds of fluffy hats. In minutes, everyone was wearing one. And there was Dad, looking like the Cowardly Lion. He's going to be mad at this picture I'm posting. We all have regrets. How else can we know what's beautiful? Oh, I'm glad you're on here, Deborah, because this one is from Argentina, a town called Bahia Blanca, and apologies in advance for my pronunciation of Spanish. Advertisement. In Bahia Blanca's helado shop are 5 flavors of dulce de leche. There's a TV where Shakira's dressed in white, asleep in a red cavern. Cut to a woman eating a spoonful of yogurt. Cut back to Shakira, who stands up slowly, and suddenly there are many Shakiras dancing in unison. They are the lady's gut bacteria, and probiotics in the yogurt made them dance. We know this even with the sound turned off. And I will end with the last one in the book after I check the time. Yes, that was about 7, right? Or this will make it. So last one of this volume is called, oh, and it's one of those ones where the title runs into the first line. Let's hear it for new lobster traps, remote controlled so whales don't swim into the lines. For tiny drones that fly into the spray the whales blow from their blowholes, collecting data from the snot. Let's hear it for the one in every 10,000 lobsters born blue. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much. That was awesome. And what I noticed in your poetry is a lot of the imagery and a lot of your poems come out like really like dreamlike. Do you write after you have a dream or?
Um, I have at least a couple of poems that come to mind that are sort of direct reports of dreams. And I think the style of dreaming appeals to me, the weirdness, the sort of impossible juxtapositions, those to me have a lot of energy. And yeah, dreams can be scary, but they can also be just silly. So yeah, maybe some of the menace, but more of the oddness.
Yeah, it was very appealing for me to hear this. And dreams have do you view dreams having great importance in general?
Um, some of them, yeah. I think there is a poem in here where I relate pretty much my commonest anxiety dream. I think most people have them, especially teachers. A lot of teachers have teaching anxiety dreams. I have theater anxiety dreams. I did theater, college, post-college, so not a big chunk of my life, but so much caught up with um, kind of how I learned to be an artist and collaborate and feel confident. So yeah, dreams where I don't know the script, I have to wear this costume. So yeah, I think those have taught me over the years that anxiety might never go away, but getting to know it and to sort of laugh at it is part of the way you handle it.
So working in theater and then working in writing, those are both very difficult to make careers out of and working careers. So are you attracted to the underdog at all? And does that sort of shine through in your poetry?
I would say yes. I joined the theater company after college because my college sort of some of the experiences was I wanted to kind of do good and give back, and from my place of privilege to just go somewhere where there was need and make art. So it was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. What was the second part of your question?
Um,
Oh, the
you were attracted
underdog.
to the underdogs, yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Does it
just
come through in your work?
um it appeals to me. Another poem in here is about, and again, all artists are like this, the going to see Revenge of the Nerds Part 2 and like, yay nerds, we were all former nerds, people who do theater are nerds. So as a former present nerd, we just have a better outlook on things, we are more interesting.
I find it very interesting that you went to Revenge of the Nerds Part 2. What
Mhm.
happened to Part 1?
It was at the drive-in, so there wasn't a lot of choosing going on. It was just there it was.
The perfect drive-in movie.
Yeah.
Um, the poem that I heard, and please forgive me if I don't have it exactly right. We all have regrets. That's how we know it is beautiful. Now, that's also the title of your book. Did that whole phrase pop into your head at once?
Yeah. Yeah, there's some poems, and often the ones I end up most confident about, where I don't remember how they came to me. They're just sort of like started like that, just kind of a gift from the gods. And so partly because I'm not quite sure what those two sentences mean. And it's funny, Doug Holder in his interview zeroed in on the same two sentences. And I was like, I'm not sure what that means. Um,
It, it's such a wonderful ending of that poem. And I'm also like, would you consider yourself an epiphany poet then?
um, no, but I love the various shapes and forms of epiphany. I think as a prose writer, I'm more aware of its value or clichéness, but I think poems just they have their own shapes, and sometimes they're discoveries, and but that's not what I'm usually headed for.
Also, your history of Oberlin and Yale and California and Massachusetts. Which of those sites and locations influenced you the most as a writer? I don't
Ooh,
mean in education. I mean just sites,
yeah.
the senses.
Um, well, it would have to be Oberlin, Ohio, because I think we lay down our artist foundation where we spend childhood and adolescence in this case. And then as my dad being a poet and also taking me to theater and having poets and artists around, my mother was a museum curator. I was just steeped in this world of art and language. And so yeah, that's just kind of what got me going, soaked in deep.
So were you influenced by your dad's poetry, and did your dad ever read some of yours?
Oh, we are each other's first readers, but also worst critics. We sort of can't really say, we're just like, yay. And the main sort of influence thing, because it's sort of inevitable that he's in my brain as well as, the five other poets probably that are my number one um, flow from. Um, was just the idea of, yes, I like writing poetry. Yes, I'm, really enjoying doing this, but because my dad's a poet and he never made this, this wasn't his opinion at all. It was just like, well, I shouldn't be a poet because that would be lame, and people would think, oh, you're a poet because your dad's a poet. And for some reason, I was just like so certain of that. That's why theater. Then when I went to grad school, it's like, I'm a fiction writer. Okay, no, I'm a nonfiction writer. Um, and then it just kept like I sent out poems, I sent out essays, I kept writing, and then it just sort of one of them kept getting better, and the other one sort of okay. I still write prose occasionally, but not for like I want to make a book of this. It's not.
Yeah, I know Franz Wright and Andre Dubus had the same phenomenon. They were not going to do as their father did, yet
Hmm.
they end up excelling in
Yeah.
forms. Um,
Hold on, it's just a sec about Franz. He's another influence. He went to Oberlin, studied with my dad. My dad was an early mentor and then midlife, and Franz was my babysitter. So that's like my
wow.
a few random claim to fames, but I like telling poets that.
Yeah,
Imagining him as a college student is who
I,
is a
I
good
had a
babysitter.
chance to spend a lot of time with Franz and also exchange like emails back and forth, and
Yeah,
I miss him a great deal.
yeah, he is missed.
So, now, is anything off limits when you and your father are hanging out for the holidays and you're carving to that turkey? Like, is it off limits? Is poetry always seep in? Like, maybe you should think about writing a tanka as he's cutting off the wishbone.
It doesn't tend to sort of mix with just family stuff. He's actually, well, it's complicated now because he's in a nursing home and he's got Parkinson's, so his limits. And when he went in there, I was like, God, that's got to be boring. And of course I'll call every day, but it takes like 2 minutes to get through how you doing, how's the weather. And so very early I started reading him a few poems every day, and that's really gotten us talking about poetry in a way we sort of never did. It just doesn't come up that much in everyday life, or in, talking about the turkey. We're more likely to talk about, how we did the potatoes, because that's
One more question about your dad, and then we'll go more specifically about your work. How does your work compare to your father's? What is the main? Do you have similar strengths and similar weaknesses? Like how do they line up with each other?
One common thing, and I hope this is true for all poets, but it's particular with us, is a sense of sound, that there's music that, I think he's this way too. I am not aware of it when I write it down. It's just how my brain goes, the various forms of word rhyming, but not end rhyme. But then now he's written my work is actually a little bit more like his earlier work, because he had that more, um, sometimes dreamlike, sometimes abstract, humorous, scientific. He has gotten a lot more expansive over his career and putting in a lot of science and doing these long poems. And my poems have kind of compacted. So, yeah, we're just kind of working in different shapes and tones right now.
I really want to ask you this question, but if you don't get the reference, it's just going to fall totally flat.
All right.
Uh, How did you feel about BoJack Horseman teaching theater at Oberlin?
No, I watched like the first season and I love that. And what I'll tell you another pop culture thing, but there is something about Oberlin that fictional, people who do TV series. There was once an Oberlin t-shirt in one of the break-in movies back in the 80s. So for one thing, Oberlin, lots of artsy, smart people, they go everywhere. And it's kind of like, the Harvard people of The Simpsons dumping on Yale. Um, but yeah, Oberlin just can be a shorthand for sort of snooty, artsy, I think I'm special. The other one like that, did you see the movie about the novelist, shoot, who said, okay, she's going to write a fake novel, and it was called, oh, I can't remember, but yeah, the novelist who didn't have any soul was an Oberlin grad, and I was just like, that's so funny, that's so typical. So yeah, so
So
BoJack
watch,
Horseman
yeah,
taught
watch the
drama.
final season. If you just
I
watch the final
will.
season and you'll get the whole thing. I think you'll find it hilarious.
I can't believe no one told me. Yeah, I'll put this on the Oberlin Townie Facebook group. They'll crack up.
So Your books, Willow from Willows, 2002, and Almond Town, 2011. The next one's 2016, and then this final book that the new one is 2024. So there's a large gap between your books. So what part of your process creates that time frame?
Uh, in this case, it actually was just seeking a publisher. Like I sort of got stuck in the rut of submitting to um college presses, contests, and that succeeded with Willow from the Willow. So it just sort of made me think, okay, my next one. And it took a while, and then it took a really long while, but I had to have faith in the books. So that was why. But next year, I'm not sure if I have that anywhere. I'm getting a full length book published, and that one is like new work and then really old work that was from a book that I finally busted up to stuff into the new work. So yeah, I don't have a lot of this is what I'm doing at this point. It really is poems from different places that fall together.
Now, when you're waiting so long for a publisher, do you ever worry that the poems will get stale to you, or do you don't care about that at all? Or are you able to insert new ones after a book is accepted?
Um, I think things don't really get stale until like another book ago. That I have trouble reading from my first book because I'm just like, oh, I don't write like that anymore. I'm not that person anymore. Um, but I'm pretty rigorous about which poems sort of make that final cut. So I do have to, that's why I need a certain number of readers, because I do sort of forget to value a poem just because it's so familiar, or I think it's not cool anymore, the references are dated or something. So I do sometimes need help, just like, no, that's a good one. So
So the ones that do get cut, would you put out a book of like B-sides?
no, nobody needs that.
Um, Interesting. So they just fall into the pile of no return then, the
Yep.
big black hole.
No, it's a file.
Do you have trouble letting go of that, or is it's what's done is done?
um Oh, yeah, I would never put them back into circulation. I think, once they go in there, like, I could do that exercise where you take a line from a dead poem, and yeah, but it doesn't really matter to say goodbye to them there.
So tell me in general about your process. So you say you get this eureka line. From that moment, how long does it take you to craft the first draft? And after the first, I know that very often poems are never finished. You can always pick at them, but how long does it take to have a finished, what you feel is a finished poem?
Um, there are many answers to that, but I will sort of say what often happens with those lines that are gifts, or, a chunk of poem that's a gift. What very often happens is that I scribble that down somewhere, and then it's not that I lose it, it's just I have notebooks and folders that sort of shuffle around. I heard Rita Dove speak once, and she was very like, I have this color folder and this color folder. Mine is much more like, here or there. And I'll lose this, because I think when I first write it, I'm like, so I put it away. But then when I open it, sometimes as long as a few months later, I'll look at it and I'll I'll be excited. I'll then take it, usually, a rewrite, and then a little while later another rewrite, and then by that time I've typed it up. So yeah, just kind of back and forth over time, and then some kind of stay the way they are with very little honing.
I noticed, and I may be 100% wrong here. I was having difficulty finding your books on Amazon, and I know a lot of the smaller publishers are now disregarding Amazon as a place to sell their books. So I'm wondering if that's the case with, I know Main Street Rag and Finishing Line. Are they accessible in the that part of the billionaires world?
I actually haven't checked lately. That's a great question. And what I did was just not too long ago change my website from each book having a link to the Amazon page, because my husband's the one who sets it up and Amazon has a chip in his brain. But I was redoing the website so that instead click to buy, it took you to the publisher. So, but that would be a really good question. And then I would want to know, put my book on Amazon. So if people have a chip in their brain, they can buy it there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Bezos puts those chips in your brain for a certain cost, but you get a free chip if you're part of Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Last question. So, how long have you been here in the North Shore at Beverly? And was the choice of Beverly intentional for where you teach, or was it intentional? Because I know that's kind of the Massachusetts. I feel the North Shore is the hub of poetry in Massachusetts these days.
I certainly felt to have been lucky to come to where there's such a just nice community, and that's a horrible word, but people supporting each other and promoting each other. Um, I came here 17 years ago because my husband got a job at Endicott teaching philosophy and religion, and they're really good to their non-adjunct faculty. They've just treated him well, let him pursue cool stuff, and yeah, we've liked the community.
All right. Well, it was such a pleasure having you and talking to you, and I could talk to you for another half an hour, but we have time constraints. I try to keep the show to like a certain. So MargaretYoungPoet.com, and when you open it's very interesting. You open it to a poem, and not a lot of writers do this. You got to go. Uh, then you can go to the books, and I'll show people the books if this loads fast enough. There are the books. The four there, including the new one that I'm circling here with my pointer. And there's readings and bio. And please check it out. And thanks once again.
The teaching page is blank, just so you know. I'm trying to change it to like prose pieces, but whatever. Oh, Tim, this was really, really delightful. I like your venue, just sort of read and then chat. Just poet to poet. It was good. Hey, there's my dad. No.
So if you're watching this on the stream on Facebook, I am going to disengage with you. But if you want to come in and read a poem yourself, use the Zoom link and I'll be happy to let you in. Thanks for watching. Margaret, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.